This is regarding the blockade that's happening up on the Morris Forest Service Road that went up November 14th, 2021. First off, I want to mention to our local non-Wet'suwet'en members that we're sorry you ended up in the middle of this. Those that are at the camp, those that are working to as part of their livelihood. But I must say that we gave ample notice to CGL that we were going to act on this. On November 14th, we gave an 8-hour notice to CGL. And then we decided an additional 2 after that, 10 hours. A total of 20 hours was given to CGL to vacate the camp and that the road was going to be closed. We mean no harm to anyone, nor that the safety of others. We took note of that. We are quite familiar with the camp setup. We are quite familiar with the safety issues that are out there. When the roads were closed by enforcing our eviction notice to CGL that we delivered back in January 4, 2020, we were contacted by some of the BC representatives, and all they did was lecture us and reiterated the safety issues for the people at the camp regarding their food supplies and other mentions that really is not related to the safety issues. Now, in talking about the safety issues, the RCMP is currently blocking kilometer 29 and not allowing any food supplies or medical supplies back up to our camps, our territory, our unceded lands, to our people, which we don't mind. It's our land. We know how to hunt. We know how to set snares. We eat rabbits and all that good stuff out on our Inta. But that's beside the point. They're saying safety, and yet they don't allow anybody up there to check on our people. Our perspective on this is quite simple. But before I get into the perspective, for the general public, for the local people, these are the facts, and this is what is at issue. These are the issues that we're facing, that we said from day one. Since the start of the project, and I'm referring to this pipeline, CGL, they never proceeded to contact the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs. They started instead to divide the Wet'suwet'en people through the benefit agreements and excluded the hereditary chiefs. Also, CGL ensued a defamation of character toward the hereditary chiefs. And that's a civil wrong. CGL stated that they were in consultation, that consultations were done and mentioned Indian bands, First Nations, not the hereditary chiefs, not in any of their correspondence. We went as far as calling CGL out to our Yinta in kilometer 27 last summer, in 2020 rather. And at that time, the president and the vice president were there. And they were attempting to start a dialogue with us, the hereditary chiefs, in particular with me. But there was something that was not right with this situation. So we turned to the president and we said to him, before we start that dialogue, we need an apology in writing from you, the president of CGL. The vice president was there as well. In this apology, it should state the wrongs that they've done toward the Wet'suwet'en people, in particular the hereditary chiefs, in not consulting with them and not including them in the planning and the development of this pipeline from day one, and slandering the hereditary chiefs and misinforming the local people of Smithers, Telkwa, Houston, Hazelton, Terrace, Burns Lake, Prince George, and making us to look like we're the bad people in this whole situation. The Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs agreed at that time that if this letter was given and was completed, it would start the process of dialogue. 1 year later, no letter. 1 year later, no reply from CGL. This is what the local people need to know. And this is what needs to be informed of by this, what this company has done. Now, apart from the blockade and how it came out to be, our perspective, we're protecting the Morris River. We call it Widzen Kwa. It's a sacred headwater. Where this pipeline is going through the side of the mountains, through the mountains, all the water that's going into the Morris River is all pristine, fresh mountain water. Flows, all these little creeks coming from the mountains flows into the Morris River. The Morris River goes into the Buckley, and the Buckley goes into the Stikine, and it goes into the ocean. And the animals that depend on it along the way. Not to mention our salmon. This is why we are so devastated and beside ourselves as to why this pipeline is going through such an incredible ecosystem, the last of it in the world. This sends a danger signal to the wildlife and to this river that there's going to be a major disaster. We offered alternatives somewhere back about 4 or 5 years ago. One alternative was an alternative route that wasn't taken into consideration. They just instead bulldozed, they literally bulldozed, signed agreements, and circumvented the hereditary chiefs again. And then, when the drill pad was constructed, they were going to drill under the river. That's when we intervened. We said, no, that cannot happen. We've asked for their most smartest, intelligent engineer that they could find in the world, if they had to come up with an indestructible system that can go over the river. And thus the 60-day moratorium was placed by the BC government and the Oil and Gas Commission. This is what we offered. All we got was lectures from the BC government. And CGL, they just continued on through the RCMP. They continuously bullied, pushed around, tortured, and insisted their way through. This is not a reconciliation. This is not the way to do it. So what are we saying here? Yes, to the local people, we're not against you. You lived amongst us for many, many years. The overuse of injunctions, as many of you know, historically, became land grabs and what you see out there today. So, blocking us from our own territory, establishing conditions, the RCMP saying that we'll let you go on a condition that you don't come back to your own land. That tells us a lot on the reconciliation. So we're asking again, in a diplomatic way, for Trudeau to sit down with us, the hereditary chiefs. Oregon to sit down with us, the hereditary chiefs, so that we could start a dialogue, so we could start the discussions that we know what we're talking about, and we want to inform you how we could do this together. And I'm hoping that this statement here has clarified a lot for the local people. I mentioned the municipalities. In the future, we can do a lot together. And we can make things happen. We can be a world leader in our economics. Not with an outside, out of the country, out of the province, company that bullies you around, flashing the cash around, and getting their way through the RCMP, through injunctions. That's not the way to do it. I just don't know how they got their social license through this method. And if anybody can't see that, ignorance is there indeed. Again, I would like to offer some good conscience here. We're open to a dialogue, not something that we've seen back in February 2020 and then 2019. And I kid you not, If this video statement goes out, and within the next 48 hours, I won't be surprised if the RCMP have enforced some form of an injunction all over again.